So module 3, we'll talk about enabling team-based data science with Azure Databricks. When I looked at the course outline, I was a little bit surprised by that to see data science in a data engineering course, Chris.
When you've been working on data science, so I've spent the last couple of years working in the AI and data science team, right? And the biggest problem that data scientists have, or the biggest focus of their job when performing data science projects, is data preparation. Data scientists will say that they wish they could get more help in this area.
And that help needs to come from a data engineer? Or?
Well, data engineers, data professionals as a whole, whether you're a data engineer or a BI developer, or a database administrator, or a database developer, we all in some way manipulate data in some way. We ingest it through maybe select statements, we might transform it using SQL Server integration services, or indeed T-SQL statements. At the end of the day, the way a data scientist talks about data preparation, a lot of the data prep work could be handled by a data engineer. Now, let me be absolutely clear that there are some areas of data preparation that a data scientist would need to do in addition to what a data engineer does. So a data engineer might prepare and cleanse the data, but then a data scientist might take that cleansed data and then do normalization on it, ready to prepare it for building a model.
Okay, so
there's a very clear line of demarcation.
I'm not sure if I'm totally getting it.
No, that's fine.
This is probably, if I struggle with it, that's where, as a trainer, I can see how I would struggle with it as a trainer coming from my strong DBA background.
Sure.
So you're really going to have to guide me to the purpose of this module.
No problem. So let's do that by going through the lessons.
Okay, let's go.
So let's first of all, in the first lesson, describe what Azure Databricks is all about.
Yep.
And once we understand that, then we can provision the service.
Yep.
And when you're provisioning the service, you create what's called a workspace.
Yep.
With the workspace in place, you then need to ingest data in some way.
Okay.
You do that by reading it, just like you would in SQL. You do a select statement, right? So in lesson 3, we look at how we read data using Azure Databricks.
So this is really about...
I need you to do that.
Data processing?
Not quite.
Okay.
Because all I'm asking you to do is understand what its capability is, provision it, read data into it. That's all I need you to do.
Okay.
In terms of processing it, that's lesson 4. Which is performing the transformation.
Okay.
I don't need you to be experts in transforming in Databricks. You need to be aware that the capability is there.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So, describing Azure Databricks, we've got 4 lesson objectives here. And really, there are other methods that you could do this, right? So we're talking about Azure Databricks in the context of Spark.
Yep.
And for anyone who's worked with HD Insight, we know that we can configure a HD Insight cluster as a Spark cluster. But what Azure Databricks does is it makes life easier in wrapping all that capability up so that it could be used by data scientists and data engineers.
Plus all the other benefits I get from a data science aspect of Databricks.
Exactly. So that's why we have to look at lesson 3 and talk about how Databricks can integrate with the enterprise level security and how it can integrate with other cloud services as well. So it is Apache Spark based analytics platform, right?
Correct.
And you could argue that, well, I could use HD Insight for that. Yes, you could, but that takes a bit of work to set up. It takes a bit of work to understand, and you definitely need to have expertise in that area to really get up to speed with it. Databricks simplifies that, right? It completely simplifies it. But more importantly, it also integrates with the security capabilities of Azure. So you're getting all the benefits of Azure from a security perspective.
Is that Azure AD?
Yes, with the ease of provisioning it, and also the ability to provision with other Azure Data Platform services, as well as Power BI as well.
Yep, okay, cool.
So some people in your room may not even know what Apache Spark is, so you're going to have to go at a simple level and explain to them, maybe even Hadoop, and how Spark sits upon Hadoop, and all the information you need to know is there. This isn't really for a certification objective being met, it's for a learning experience, right? Just helping them understand the evolution of Hadoop into Apache Spark, into Azure Databricks, right?
Fair.
So I would say, you know, take some time just making sure that they understand that. And then talk about the enterprise security integration with Azure Active Directory, role-based access control, and of course all the service level agreements that you get naturally with Azure.
Makes sense.
Okay. I don't need to explain the list of integration of technologies here. All I will explain is that you should be familiar at this point with Data Lake Store now, because you've just covered it in Module 2, but and Blob Store as well, of course, but do call out that Cosmos DB, SQL Data Warehouse, and Data Factory are covered in other modules. Yeah, we don't cover Power BI, and Cognitive Services is covered on AI engineering.
Makes sense.
Okay. So lesson 2 is about provisioning the service. Once they understand the capability, talk about the provisioning and talk about doing it in the Azure portal. It's the easiest way, okay? So create an Azure Databricks workspace, go through the options with resource group, location, pricing tiers. You know, just, again, you want to probably open it up in the portal so that if there's any UI changes, you can do it there. Once the workspace is provisioned, it's important to create a cluster and a notebook in Azure Databricks.
Then when I look at this from a preparation perspective, I see the quick start tutorials there.
Yeah.
Probably in terms of prep, it would be good for me to go through some of these quick starts.
We've put that in the lab as well.
Okay.
So we've put that as an optional exercise in the lab for people who want to go further with this. I'm still an MCT today, but when I was a full-time MCT, whenever I prepped a course, I always went through the labs anyway, and that I'm expecting that MCTs will have gone through the labs.
And then more than likely, I will also be delivering the data science course and the AI engineering course as well, right?
That's a really good question. I haven't assumed that actually.
Well, I'm pretty sure my learning partners that I work for
the learning partners would love you to be able to teach everything, right? They want you to teach everything. But I do know that a lot of learning partners are recognizing that maybe with the data science, they're actually hiring people with that specific skill set. Okay. So there is a combination where maybe you'll teach data science, maybe you won't.
Okay.
You know? But this is actually a really important point because it denotes the line of demarcation for this particular module. And the line of demarcation is we don't provision models or train or score because that is not a data engineer's job.
That's data science.
The data engineer is to provision it, create the cluster that it can run on, have the notebook so you can do your work, and that work from a data engineer's perspective is reading the data and performing basic transformations. That's it.
Okay.
So lesson 3 is about reading data using Azure Databricks. And in here we've got 2 lesson objectives. Using Azure Databricks to access data sources and reading data in Azure Databricks. Now, you should be very comfortable with Data Lake as a storage platform already.
You just covered that.
Exactly. But acknowledge that SQL Database, Cosmos DB, SQL Data Warehouse, and Event Hubs, these are all valid data sources as well, but we're covering them in later modules.
And I might have experience with that relational engine already.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Okay, fair.
As far as reading data goes, there's a number of different ways that you could do it. You could actually do it in SQL. But you could do it in Python. We're not expecting you to do this in preparation for the exam. You're not expected to type Python.
Makes sense.
But we just wanted to say that as an example, if you did a select statement in SQL, this is what it would look like in Python. Just to provide that.
And so the core purpose of here is I just did configure Databricks I want to make sure I can read data into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a data engineer, you might literally just get asked, "Hey, can you provision provision Databricks for the data scientists?"
Yeah.
Well, when I'm provisioning stuff, usually I like to test that it's working, so I just do a simple select statement just to make sure that it's up and running before handing it off.
Yep.
So it's just validating that thing is up and running.
And then to really point out from a prep perspective, there's an additional learning path on Learn where people could go for additional prep, understanding of Databricks, because when I started preparing for this was an area that I kind of struggled with.
Oh, the Databricks content on Learn is really thorough.
Okay.
So that's the great, you bring up a really good point there, actually. At the end of the day, we're only touching the surface with this module, right? There's a very clear line of demarcation that I want you to provision it, I want you to read it. I mean, the next lesson we're going to look at transformations, but we're not expecting you really to know too deep into that either. But if you really want to go to town, go to Learn. The Azure Databricks content there is very, very in-depth.
Yeah, and so what I would look like is I want to be relatively well prepared for this, so I would go explore those learning paths.
Exactly, definitely.
Yep. Okay,
definitely.
fair point.
So once you've looked at reading, then you will look at performing transformations.
Yep.
And those transformations that come basically at two levels, basic and advanced transformations. But what we do in this particular lesson, we start off with performing ETL to populate a data model. So you're going through the process of extraction, and there's a wide range of data sources that we can connect to. You want to validate the data to make sure that it's what you expect. You want to transform it, right? And that transformation could be simple transforms, or they may be complex transforms. Sometimes you get corruptions. And the great thing about Azure Databricks is that there's a corrupt record handling function in there that allows you to handle that corrupt data, such as missing or incomplete information. That actually creates a separate column in the table to indicate that it's a corrupt record. And then, of course, loading data. Now, it will vary depending on the data store that you use. But, you know, you've got to figure out what is the design pattern for loading that data. And maybe, you know, it may be more efficient to have your source data as Parquet files that's loaded in rather than straight from the original source. So be mindful of the ETL pattern there. As far as basic transforms go, missing and null data, handling that, normalizing values, deduplicate, the standard stuff that you would do in migrations or business intelligence solutions. But if you want to go really advanced with this, you could use user-defined functions to have custom logic that handles specific use cases for data. Maybe you're using joins or lookup tables to bring data together. You might be loading from multiple databases.
To me, this almost feels like we're going a little deep in this.
Yeah, that's a fair point. From a certification perspective, we don't expect you to do this. I guess what we're trying to do here is add value to the materials to say, look, in the real world, as a data engineer, you're probably going to go as far as reading data. You may do basic transformations, but there is additional capability that is available. It's just giving you that information.
Fair.
So once the review questions are done, the lab is picking up on the last lab that you did. So in the last lab, you are asked to upload files into Data Lake Store. And in this lab, you are going to use that data from Data Lake Store and process it within Azure Databricks, where you'll provision Azure Databricks, you'll create a cluster, you'll create a notebook, you'll read those files in the Azure Data Lake Store, and you'll perform simple transformations. If you've got a couple of people in there who are really good at this, we have optional exercises for them to do more advanced transformations while they're waiting for the rest of the group.
Fair.
So the lab scenario, again, gives you more detailed information to supplement the case study that we've done. And the review questions, again, are designed to have open-ended questions about the lab. Here, go through the module review, but what we've got here is a video for post-course to help them revisit this that gives them a deep dive into Azure Databricks deployment networking and security.
Now, when you say next step after the course video, is that something you expect the students to do on their own time?
Oh, yeah. So,
Okay.
you know, when you're teaching a course, sometimes you'll get students go, hey, is there anything more that I could look at? Well, our first protocol is learn, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted just to give you something a little bit different, because I don't know about you, but you know, some of my learning these days is on public transport on my mobile phone, you know, just downloading a video and watching it on there. So, yeah, we're just giving just some additional material, but I don't expect you to do this in the course
Yep.
now.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
And that's the module on Azure Databricks enabling team-based data science solutions.
Okay, let's head over to the next module then.